Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into some really core ideas about what makes leaders effective
Right.
or what holds them back.
Right. And we're drawing from some key excerpts from a pretty well-known book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell.
Yeah, in this book, it's basically Maxwell trying to answer that big question.
Yeah.
If you had to boil down everything about leadership, what are the absolute must-knows?
Exactly. He presents them as these sort of fundamental truths, laws that don't really change.
And who's this for? Is it just CEOs?
No, not at all. That's a key point the source makes. It's really for anyone who wants to be more effective, make a bigger impact. At work, sure, but also, in your community, even at home. It's broader than just organizational charts.
Right. And I think why it resonates and why we're digging into it is that it's not just theory. It's packed with stories, real-world examples from his own experience and observation. Makes it feel grounded.
Definitely practical. It tries to be straightforward, maybe even a bit accessible. Yeah.
So, our mission here is to walk through some of these core laws. We'll use the stories from the text to kind of see how they work in practice, step by step.
Sounds good.
Let's start with one that's really foundational. It's called the Law of the Lid. And the story behind it is quite revealing.
Okay.
The source kicks off with the McDonald brothers, Dick and Maurice. Back in the day, the 40s, they had this drive-in in San Bernardino, and they were brilliant at running it.
Really efficient operators.
Totally. They developed the speedy service system, streamlined everything, cut costs, boosted profits. They were making good money, very successful locally, fantastic managers.
Mm-hmm. And that's where this lid idea comes in, right?
Exactly. The Law of the Lid basically says your leadership ability sets the ceiling, the lid on how effective you can be.
So no matter how skilled you are in other areas like management or technical stuff?
Right, or how good your product is. Your leadership skill ultimately limits your potential impact and the organization's potential.
Okay, so the McDonald brothers.
Great managers, maybe an 8 out of 10 on running the restaurant, but the source suggests their leadership lid. Maybe a 1 or 2 out of 10. They couldn't really see beyond their single successful shop.
And then comes Ray Krocrock.
Yes. Contrast them with Krocrock. The brothers actually tried franchising a bit in the 50s, barely got anywhere, maybe 10 restaurants opened. One brother apparently even worried the name McDonald's wouldn't work outside California.
Wow. Limited vision there.
But Krocrock, who had a much, much higher leadership lid, saw the potential. He took their exact same system.
And what happened?
Between 55 and 59, 100 restaurants. 4 years later, 500. Now, over 21,000. It's a stark difference.
It really hammers home that point.
Yeah.
Personal success and leadership aren't the same thing. To really scale something, to multiply its impact, you need that leadership capacity. It lifts the lid.
The source mentions a couple of other quick ones, too. Jerry Faust, amazing high school football coach, just couldn't replicate it at Notre Dame. Different level of leadership needed.
Right, and the Apple example.
Yeah, Wozniak, the engineering genius. But it was Steve Jobs, the leader, who built the global organization. Talent needs leadership to maximize its reach.
So the takeaway is pretty clear. Leadership ability is always the limiting factor. When things stall, often you need new leadership to raise that ceiling.
Okay, so that law shows the limit if leadership's low, but it kind of begs the question, what exactly is leadership? Because, lots of people mix it up with just being the manager.
That's a huge point. The management myth, as the source calls it. People think it's about maintaining systems, overseeing processes, having the title.
Like the quote from Ayakaka, the manager following the dog.
Exactly. Management is often about keeping things running smoothly. Leadership is about influencing people to follow you, often into new territory.
Which brings us neatly to the law of influence. The book boils it down simply. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less.
Position doesn't guarantee it.
Not at all. The story about Abraham Lincoln early in his career during the Black Hawk War, it's perfect. He was appointed captain, had the rank, the position, but there's this moment where he needs to get his troops through a narrow gate, and he literally doesn't know the right military command.
Seriously, what did he do?
He just yells, "This company is dismissed for 2 minutes when it will fall in again on the other side of the gate." It's funny, but it shows title doesn't equal actual influence or know-how, right?
Definitely highlights the difference.
Now, contrast that with someone like Diana, Princess of Wales.
Ah, okay. She started with massive position, obviously. Royalty.
Right. But her real power, her leadership, came from her influence. And interestingly, the source points out her influence actually grew after she lost her official HRH title post-divorce.
That is interesting. So the formal power decreased, but her personal influence went up.
Seems like it. She just connected with people, rallied support for tough causes, AIDS, leprosy, landmines. There's a quote about her directly influencing President Clinton on the landmine ban.
Wow.
Even her funeral, watched by billions. It showed this deep, lasting connection. It wasn't about the title she held. It was her ability to genuinely move people.
So real leadership is earned influence, not just granted authority. It's about getting people to want to follow.
Okay, so if it's influence, not just position, is it something you're just born with? Like, are some people natural leaders and others aren't?
Well, that's where the law of process comes in. And the answer is pretty clear. Leadership develops daily, not in a day. It's a journey.
It's not an overnight thing.
Definitely not. It's about consistent growth, learning, applying yourself over time.
The story of Theodore Roosevelt here is just incredible. We picture him as this, larger-than-life, robust figure.
Enterprise writer, yeah.
But as a kid, he was incredibly sickly, severe asthma, terrible eyesight, really frail. Doctors weren't even sure he'd survive childhood.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah. And the source highlights this moment when he was 12. His father basically said to him, "You have the mind, but you don't have the body. You have to make the body."
Powerful words.
Yeah.
And TR took that to heart.
Completely. He applied this law of process relentlessly, dedicated time every single day to building himself up physically, weights, hiking, boxing, and mentally, reading constantly. He even admitted he was naturally timid.
No way.
Yeah, but he admired courage, so he deliberately worked day by day to become courageous.
So he wasn't born that way. He built it.
Exactly. He didn't just become president or a great leader. It was this slow, steady, intentional climb through every job he held. Police commissioner, Navy secretary, governor. Each role was part of his development process.
It really drives home that leadership is accessible, right? It's something you build through discipline and experience applied consistently, like compound interest.
Yeah, the book mentions Ann Schreiber, too, who turned a small investment into millions over decades. Same principle.
Yeah.
Small, consistent efforts add up hugely over time.
So leadership is influence, and it's built through a process.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do these developing leaders actually, guide people? Where do they take them?
That's the law of navigation. This one's crucial. The idea is anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course.
You see the whole journey ahead.
Precisely. Leaders anticipate, they plan. And the story used here is incredibly dramatic, the race to the South Pole, Amundsen versus Scott.
Oh, right. 1911, 1912. High stakes.
Literally life and death. And it perfectly shows the difference good navigation makes. Amundsen, the Norwegian, master planner.
What did he do specifically?
Meticulous preparation before they even left. Studied indigenous Arctic travelers, chose the right equipment, dog sleds, not experimental motors, picked expert skiers and dog handlers.
Smart.
Set a sustainable daily travel goal, allowing for rest, and crucially, he established supply depots all along the planned route. They knew where their next meal and fuel stop was.
So they were prepared for the long haul.
Totally.
Yeah.
Their biggest reported problem was literally an infected tooth. They reached the pole more than a month before Scott.
And Scott's expedition.
Tragically, the opposite. Poor navigation. He relied on motorized sledges that broke down, ponies that couldn't handle the conditions. His men ended up man-hauling heavy sleds.
Oh, man. That sounds exhausting.
And then fatal. They ran out of food, suffered from scurvy, couldn't adapt. They reached the pole only to find Amundsen's flag already there. And on the return journey, they all perished.
It's heartbreaking. And it came down to planning.
Largely, yes. Scott's inability to anticipate, plan effectively, and adjust course doomed them. The source even mentions him insisting on collecting 30 pounds of rocks when they were starving. Bad priorities, bad navigation.
So navigation isn't just having a destination. It's about the detailed plan, anticipating obstacles, setting priorities, communicating.
Exactly. The source sums it up with a little acrostic plan. Predetermine course, lay out goals, adjust priorities, notify key people. It's about thinking through the whole trip. I've definitely seen projects succeed or fail based on that upfront thinking.
Yeah, you can't just wing it when the stakes are high.
Right. But charting the course is one thing. You also need the people on board to, be with you on that journey.
Absolutely. Which leads us to the law of connection. Leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand.
I like that phrasing.
It's powerful, isn't it? The idea that people won't really commit, won't give you their best, unless they feel some kind of connection with you as a leader. They need to know you care.
The book uses the example of Elizabeth Dole speaking at the Republican convention compared to her husband, Bob Dole.
Right. Elizabeth Dole had this ability, even through a TV screen, to make people feel like she was talking directly to them, like she understood them. Created warmth, connection.
Whereas Bob Dole, despite his experience and qualifications, often came across as more distant, struggled to make that same emotional link.
And it's not just about big speeches, is it? This connection thing applies one-on-one, too.
Totally. That phrase, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, that's central here.
It really is.
The author shares a personal story about moving to a new leadership role at a church. There was this very influential guy, Jim Butts, who had a reputation for being kind of negative.
The potential roadblock.
Exactly. But instead of trying to overpower him or ignore him, the author deliberately set out to connect with Jim.
Wow.
Just spent time with him, listened to him, built rapport, showed he valued his perspective, earned his trust over time.
Did it work?
Big time. When it came time for a major project, building a new auditorium, Jim, the potential naysayer, was actually on board and became a supporter. That connection changed everything.
It shows the connection isn't passive. Leaders have to initiate it. It's part of the job.
Yeah, you can't just wait for people to warm up to you. You got to reach out. Okay, so you're connecting with people who are the most important people to connect with.
That brings us to the law of the inner circle. This one's huge. A leader's potential is determined by those closest to them.
No Lone Ranger leaders, huh?
Pretty much impossible, according to this law. You can only go so far on your own. Your inner circle, your key team members, they determine your capacity.
The example used is taking over Skyline Church. It had a good history, good people, but it had kind of plateaued, growth stalled.
Okay.
And the leader quickly realized the issue wasn't the congregation, it was the immediate staff. They were good people, but maybe not the strong leaders needed to take things to the next level.
The inner circle wasn't strong enough.
Exactly. The principle is, if your core team is weak or just not aligned with where you need to go, they become the bottleneck. Your effectiveness is capped by their abilities.
Makes sense. So what does the leader do?
It was tough, apparently. Had to make changes, assess the team, let go of the weakest performers, and then systematically, over about 3 years, replaced others and brought in stronger leaders. Only 2 of the original team remained.
Wow, 3 years. That's a process.
But the result, the source says the organization broke through its limits and reached a whole new level of effectiveness because the inner circle was now capable of getting them there.
It's not just about having people around you. It's about having the right people.
Right. And there's another story about hiring Dave Sutherland for one of their authors' companies, I Enjoy Stewardship Services. It was struggling.
Okay.
The author knew it needed strong leadership, but was too busy. He meets Dave. Dave lays out this brilliant strategy, and the author thinks, that's the guy. He can do this.
So he tried to hire him.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
But Dave was so focused on explaining the plan, he kept kind of brushing off the job offer. Finally, the author just said, Dave, I want you to run this. And he took it.
And Sutherland became part of the inner circle.
Absolutely. Turned the company around, made it highly successful, and his strategic thinking ended up benefiting all the author's ventures. He became a key player.
It highlights how crucial finding and empowering those key people is. Like surrounding yourself with advisors who are smarter than you in certain areas.
Yeah, the source mentions Billy Graham, Ronald Reagan, leaders who intentionally built strong teams around them.
Right. You need that collective strength.
Okay, so you've navigated, connected, built this strong inner circle. Now, how do you get everyone fired up and moving in the same direction? How do you get them to commit?
That's the law of buy-in.
Yep.
And the core idea is simple but profound. People buy into the leader first, then the vision.
The leader before the plan.
Exactly. Your charisma, your credibility, your connection with them, that's what sells the vision, not just the vision itself.
The example of Mahatma Gandhi is powerful here. Before him, the movement for Indian independence often involved violence. Gandhi came with a radical vision, nonviolent civil disobedience.
A huge shift in approach.
Massive. And the source argues people didn't adopt nonviolence simply because it was a clever tactic on paper.
They adopted it because they believed in Gandhi.
Precisely. They bought into him, his integrity, his commitment, his leadership. Once they trusted and followed him, they embraced his vision. And that vision ultimately led to India's independence.
So the leader's credibility unlocks the acceptance of the vision.
It seems so. Think back to that church auditorium story. The leader knew building it was the right vision early on.
But he didn't push it right away.
Nope. He knew the timing wasn't right because the people hadn't fully bought into him yet. He spent 2 years building trust, delivering results, proving his leadership. Then he presented the vision.
And the buy-in was there.
Overwhelmingly, 98% voted yes. Because they trusted the leader, they were ready to embrace his vision for the future.
It's a critical lesson, isn't it? You can have the most brilliant plan, but if people don't trust or believe in you, it's likely going nowhere. You got to earn that buy-in first.
Yeah. Success isn't just having a noble goal. It's actually getting people there.
Which requires them to follow you willingly.
Okay, so people are bought in. How do leaders make sure they actually win, especially when things get tough?
That's the law of victory. Leaders find a way for the team to win, period.
An inability to accept defeat.
That's exactly how the source puts it. For victorious leaders, the alternative to winning is simply unacceptable. They have this relentless drive. The story of Southwest Airlines and Herb Kelleher really captures this, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Starting up in the late 60s, early 70s, they faced brutal opposition from the big established airlines. Braniff, Continental. They tried to legally block Southwest from even flying.
A 4-year court battle.
Yeah, just to get off the ground. They were burning through cash, facing constant legal challenges. At one point, the source says, the board was ready to throw in the towel. They were out of money.
But Kelleher wasn't.
No way.
Yes.
He embodied this law of victory. He apparently told the board, let's go one more round. He personally argued their case in court, deferred his own fees, paid court costs out of pocket. He just refused to lose.
That's incredible commitment.
And they finally won the right to fly. And the rest is history, right? Southwest became famously profitable year after year, great culture, loyal customers.
And the source suggests that initial fight, that refusal to lose, actually forged their identity.
Yeah, created that warrior mentality they became known for. It shows that leaders who live by this law don't really have a plan B. It's succeed or succeed.
Like Winston Churchill during the war, victory at all costs. Same mindset.
Exactly. Okay, so you achieve victory. How do you keep that energy going? How do you build on success?
Now you're talking about the law of the big Mo. Momentum. It's a leader's best friend.
The big Mo. I like that.
It's incredibly powerful. Momentum can make challenges seem smaller and tasks easier. It's like having the wind at your back.
The story of Jaime Escalante, the calculus teacher at Garfield High in L.A. That's the stand and deliver story, right?
That's the one. Started in the late 70s, Garfield was this struggling inner-city school. Escalante decided to teach AP calculus, which was unheard of there.
Start small.
Very. 14 students the first year. Only a few passed the AP exam. But the next year, more passed. Momentum started to build, slowly. Then came the big test, literally.
Right. 1982, 18 students took the AP exam after working incredibly hard, early mornings, late nights. They all passed.
Amazing. But that wasn't the end of the story, was it?
No. The testing service, ETS, accused 14 of the 18 students of cheating because their answers were similar on some problems. A huge momentum killer.
Devastating for the kids and the program. How did Escalante handle it?
He stood by his students completely, defended their integrity, fought the accusation, and crucially, convinced them to retake the test to prove they knew the material.
And they passed again.
Every single one of them. He turned that potential disaster into a rallying cry, regaining and then amplifying the momentum.
And the program just exploded after that.
Totally. Went from 18 passing to 31 the next year, then 63, then over 100 taking the test. Garfield started producing a significant percentage of all the Mexican-American students passing AP Calc nationwide. It transformed the school's reputation.
It shows how powerful momentum is. Once you get it rolling, it can carry people further than they thought possible. Like that underdog U.S. Olympic hockey team in 1980.
Yeah, momentum is contagious. When you have it, obstacles shrink. When you don't, even simple things feel impossible.
It really is a leader's best friend.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground. Influence, process, navigation, connection, inner circle, buy-in, victory, momentum. It sounds like a lot for a leader to manage. How do they focus their energy?
That's where the law of priorities comes in. Leaders understand that just being busy activity isn't the same as achieving results accomplishment.
So it's about focusing on the right things.
Exactly. The source suggests thinking about priorities in 3 ways. Requirement, what absolutely must be done by you. Return, what gives the biggest bang for your buck, the greatest return on your time and energy. And reward, What are you passionate about? What energizes you?
And delegate the rest.
Pretty much. If someone else can do something 80% as well, let them do it, especially if it frees you up for the high-return activities.
The example of Jack Welch taking over GE in 1981 is pretty stark here. GE was already huge, successful, 11th biggest company.
Doing well, but Welch wanted better. He wanted world class.
And his priority strategy was incredibly simple, almost brutal.
Be number 1 or number 2 in the global market for that business, or get out.
Right. That single criterion drove everything. They sold off or divested hundreds of businesses that didn't meet the mark, billions of dollars worth.
And invested heavily in the ones that remained, the potential winners.
The result. By the end of the decade, GE consisted of 14 world-class businesses, each a global leader. And the company's value soared. It was all about ruthless prioritization.
It shows that focusing resources on the areas of highest potential return yields massive results. Doing less, but doing the right things better.
The author also shares a personal example of having to reprioritize when moving to Atlanta. His schedule got crazy, multiple organizations growing.
Got to figure out where to put his time.
Yeah. He's carved out more family time, then sat down with key leaders and basically allocated his work time across 4 core areas: leadership, communicating, creating, and networking. It's an ongoing process, right? Reevaluating priorities.
Absolutely. Effectiveness isn't about doing more tasks. It's about doing the right tasks according to clear priorities.
Okay, so leading effectively, making these tough priority calls, achieving victory. It often involves making hard choices, doesn't it? Giving things up.
It absolutely does. That brings us to the law of sacrifice. You have to give up to go up.
The higher you climb.
The greater the sacrifices you generally have to make. Leadership isn't free.
The Lee Iacocca story at Chrysler again. When he took over in '78, the company was sinking fast, losing millions daily, heading for bankruptcy.
And he came from Ford, where he'd been incredibly successful, developed the Mustang, left when they were making record profits. He was set.
Right. But to save Chrysler, look what he had to give up. He took a symbolic $1 a year salary.
It's a huge personal financial sacrifice right off the bat.
Yeah. Then he had to make incredibly tough decisions. Laying off longtime workers, closing plants, slashing costs. He had to convince the union to accept concessions, go hat in hand to the government for loan guarantees.
Basically putting the organization's survival above everything else, his own comfort, popularity, even his pride sometimes.
Exactly. He had to sacrifice his rights, in a way, for the good of the whole. And his leadership, fueled by that sacrifice, turned Chrysler around.
It's a powerful demonstration that leadership requires putting the mission and the people ahead of yourself.
The source also points to Martin Luther King Jr. as maybe the ultimate example of sacrifice.
Giving up comfort, safety, freedom, and ultimately his life for the cause he believed in.
Yeah, that quote from his last speech about being to the mountaintop and not fearing any man. He knew the risks, the potential sacrifice, and accepted it.
It shows that sacrifice isn't just about the beginning of leadership. To stay effective, especially at high levels, often requires ongoing sacrifice, continuous change, and improvement.
You have to keep giving things up to keep growing or maintain success. Okay, one last law to touch on, and it's one that can trip up even leaders with good intentions.
Yes, the law of timing. This one's subtle but critical. When to lead is just as important as what to do and where to go.
Doing the right thing at the wrong time
Can lead to resistance or outright failure. But the right action at the right time, that leads to success. Timing is everything.
The example used is Jimmy Carter's election in 1976.
Okay, how does that fit?
Well, think about the national mood then. Post-Vietnam, post-Watergate. People were tired, disillusioned, deeply skeptical of Washington insiders.
Right, a real desire for something different.
And along comes Carter, a peanut farmer, former governor, a clear outsider. He ran on that explicitly. I've been accused of being an outsider. I plead guilty.
And it worked because the timing was perfect for that message.
Exactly. The source suggests that at almost any other time, before or since, Carter likely wouldn't have been elected. But in '76, the national timing created the opening for his specific kind of leadership.
It shows how leaders need to read the situation, understand the currents, and act when the moment is right.
Yeah, and the author shares a personal story, too. Trying to start a small group program at Skyline Church in the early '80s. Good idea, right action.
What?
Wrong time. They didn't have enough trained leaders in place yet to make it work, so it failed.
Okay.
6 years later, they tried the exact same program. But this time, they'd spent those years developing more leaders. The timing was right. and it was hugely successful.
Same action, different time, totally different result. It really underscores how crucial timing is for leadership effectiveness.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. From the law of the lid, setting our potential,
Understanding leadership as influence, built through process, guided by navigation,
strengthened by connection, powered by the inner circle, activated by buy-in,
driven by victory, sustained by momentum, focused by priorities.
and enabled by sacrifice and timing. It's quite a framework.
It really is. And the power comes from seeing these aren't just theories, they play out in real stories, with real consequences. Understanding them can genuinely change how you approach leadership.
So for you listening, maybe take a moment to reflect. How do these laws show up in your world? Your work, your family, your community projects?
Where might your lid be holding you back? Who's in your inner circle are they lifting you up? Are you connecting before asking for commitment?
Are you focused on the right priorities or just staying busy? When is the timing right for that initiative you're thinking about?
And maybe we could leave you with that core thought from the source material, something to chew on. Everything rises and falls on leadership.
Think about that. What areas in your life or in the organizations you care about could be lifted higher by applying some of these principles? Where could better leadership make the biggest difference?